Hello, everybody. This is Jason. This is another version of Off the Cuff. Today I'm going to talk about American Utopia. American Utopia was an album by David Byrne that eventually got adapted into a stage play or a stage performance. I believe it had a stretch on Broadway for a while, or it still does have a stretch on Broadway for a while. I don't really keep track of that. Generally speaking, Broadway does not interest me at all. I really do not like musicals at all. But American Utopia is a little bit different. I want to talk about it a little bit. I'm going to give you a little bit of history behind it, and then I'm going to talk about the part of it that I really find the most interesting. I got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to kind of get into it. So, American Utopia started off during this project called Love This Giant, which featured St. Vincent and David Byrne. They were working together on this collaborative album. Now, there was an interesting choice made early on in the process that instead of having a traditional rock band, they had basically a brass section that performed. So they had trumpets and tubas and things like that. And when they decided to go on tour to support this album, they chose to do an interesting staging idea, which was the only people that had any fixed positions on the stage were the drummer and then St. Vincent herself, who had a microphone and a pedal board. And even she didn't have any amplifiers on stage, I believe. I can't remember. It's been a while. And they were moving the marching band folks around, or they were moving the brass band people around like they were a marching band. So they were doing all kinds of interesting staging and things like that. So, and Saint Vincent and Byrne went their separate ways, and Saint Vincent since has become a much more well-known artist, and that's a great thing. David Byrne eventually released this album called American Utopia, and this is a very, very good album. He worked with Brian Eno, and once again, when we saw him, he decided to do the staging, but this time it was even more extreme. When you saw the stage, there was nothing on the stage, no equipment at all, no gear, no amplifiers, no drum kits, no microphone stands, no monitors, nothing. Everything was done through in-ear monitors. Everybody wore microphones, and all the instruments were played through a wireless connection, and they just carried the instruments on the bodies of the person. So it was and the staging was really interesting because I'd never seen that before, and it gave them the ability to do a lot of interesting like choreography that you don't normally see in a rock concert because the whole stage was open. So, and it was very choreographed, very interesting. There were a few things that they had to do, like for instance the drums. They had to split that up into more of like almost like a marching band kind of concept for the drums, so that people had different instruments and they would wear like a harness, and maybe they would have like a row of toms, and you'd have somebody that would play the toms, or maybe you'd have like the marching band harness and somebody playing a bass drum or something along those lines. Or like a keyboard player had another kind of a harness, but maybe they would have the keyboard out like this and they would be playing like that. And I even remember seeing a guitargan, like the old keyboard that looks like a guitar that looks like a keyboard, or the guitargan, or whatever the heck they call those things. But anyway, they had all this elaborate staging, and these guys were playing their instruments that way. Everybody was mic'd, and there was multiple vocalists, and there was a lot of going around. And ultimately, they decided to make this Broadway staging of it. Now, this is actually a CD from the cast recording, And I will tell you from when I saw them live in Des Moines years before this cast recording was made, that the uniforms that they're wearing and that stage was the exact same thing that they used when I saw them in Des Moines. Uh, Years before they decided to go with this route. But and of course, David Byrne, he's the Talking Heads, and he has a wealth of great songs to pull from. The staging was interesting. David Byrne has a fascination with choreography, obviously. He did something with Color Guard, of all things, a few years ago. So he really is interested in this kind of stuff. But the biggest thing it made me think about was the fact that how excessive staging is for just rock and roll shows in general. We got all these microphones and amplifiers and drum kits and everything. And in today's world, we don't really necessarily need all that. Most of the time, your guitar sound is recorded with a direct in, so you're just plugged right into into a PA, and then everything's run through there. You don't really need a traditional amplifier anymore. And then half of the time, only one of the four sets of speaker cabinets actually has any sound coming out of it anyway. Most everybody that's a big band, what they do is they have a double rig just in case they need it. But the truth is that second rig doesn't do anything. It's just there for show. They usually only have one amplifier that's actually the active amplifier, and then the other one is just kind of a dummy amplifier that's just there to look cool. And the biggest thing about it is that I still don't know how you would do the drumming, but a lot of the performing with the way that they were doing it with the wireless and the coordinating and all that kind of stuff really made me think that, we do kind of get excessive with our rock and roll staging with our equipment. We don't need all that equipment. We really don't. I mean, and in a world where the PAs are much better and the microphones are better, I can hop up on a stage with a relatively small amplifier and a microphone. And as far as everybody's going to hear with my in-ear monitors and everything, you're not going to notice any difference between what I'm coming out of my little bitty amplifier as compared to a Marshall stack. It doesn't make any difference. The ages where rock and roll guys had to go deaf by standing in front of giant rigs playing at excruciating loud volumes is gone. Don't need to do that anymore. And American Utopia is a good example of that. And it's an interesting project, and the staging is interesting. Not sure how they manage the guitar effects. That's kind of something I was thinking about today. If you need to have some distortion come in for a guitar solo or something, there had to have been somebody off stage that was running all that for them. I'm sure the backstage coordination for running that American Utopia show with, the instrument swapping and everything, I'm sure there was a pretty hefty crew of people back there, and that's a lot more people than what you would have for a normal staging of a rock concert, I got a feeling. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.